the first big clip I ever had. It was Young Jeezy, and it was an in-studio interview.
Yeah,
and I asked him how his ad-libs ended up on Can't Tell Me Nothing by Kanye. And that clip is actually so big that it recirculated with Drink Champs recently. Like I had had that clip like 3 or 4, maybe 5, 6 years ago at this point. And I remember bullying it because no matter what, that story is interesting. Whether it's they just got left on there, whether it's he gave me a call and asked me if I could do the ad-libs, whether it's we were in the studio together and my verse got cut, whatever it is, that's an answer that's gonna be a clip. So I was always thinking that way, but then now I think more in terms of short form. So it's like, okay, 15 seconds, 20 seconds is great, 30 seconds is great. What's gonna be engaging and what's gonna get right to it?
Told you we was giving you the okay, back today to make a way. You gonna die today.
All right, so we are sitting down with Jeremy Hecht, a man of many hats. So we're gonna try to unpack all of it here in just a second. But I mean, you just literally just got off the red carpet, so we got to start with that. And just left the BET Awards. So how was that?
It was good. It was my 3rd year doing it in a row, and it's always cool to see my growth, the artist's growth, and just like where I'm at a different point in my life when things happen similarly. Like I always see it as like a spiral, on like a parking structure where you're walking up and it feels kind of the same in a sense. Like you couldn't really tell what level you're on, but then if you looked out the window or out the side level, you see down that you've upped a level. So that's kind of how it feels. It's like not necessarily like I did anything different this time than I would have 2 years ago or a year ago, but I feel more elevated in a lot of ways in my life. There's a lot of artists that I've grown with that I see elevate in their career, publicists who have elevated. So it's always like a cool moment. But yeah, we got some good clips, got some, hopefully by the time you see this, some of them you'll have seen or will go viral, or if you mention it, that was him. Okay, cool. So
Definitely. Is it getting easier from a standpoint of getting in touch with the artist? I mean, kind of a familiar face at that point, or
it is.
You know what I mean?
It's easier because, so when I first started doing red carpets for real, it was 2021, so about 3 years ago. And I remember I came in with such a different energy to a lot of these carpets that everyone around, artists, publicists, and other interviewers were pretty shocked at the way I moved. Like I had somebody from Complex pull me over and said, yo, I've never seen anyone do what you just did on the red carpet. I've had my people I look up to in the interview space tell me like, hey, like the way you're doing these red carpets is very different. And so when I first started doing it, I wanted to approach it like, okay, not that HipHopDX isn't a big brand, but sometimes I'm competing with like, a Rolling Stone or an E! News. It's people where it's like they've already scheduled interviews or, they're trying to get on TV or whatever it is. So I'm like, how can I stand out in this space where I might not have a scheduled interview, or there's a big artist that's walking by that I might not ever get to, and still get content from it. And I remember me and Jordan were there shooting 2021, and I remember we just decided, I don't remember who the artist was that walked by, but there was a big artist that just like, we were like, hey, trying to get a question in, and they just kept walking. And we decided from there, like, let's just start shooting. Like, let's shoot a question that's so good that they have to turn around, otherwise they look like an asshole. Like, oh, this guy came with some care in this question. He actually likes me as an artist. We have to answer it. So I remember, like, from there, we just kept shooting questions at people. It was like, Tyler, the Creator, wasn't doing any interviews. He popped back out. DaBaby wasn't doing interviews. He popped out. Even the people that kept walking, like JT and Young Miami were walking, and I like shouted out to them. Like, I think I said, Carisha, should we, or I said, Young Miami, should we switch it and just call JT by her first name instead now? And JT was like, no. And Young Miami's like, yes, please. But like, it was just enough where you saw their reaction. It was a 1 million view clip. And it was 6 seconds, and they didn't even come over. So I was like, okay, how can we utilize and make the most of every second we get with artists? I don't need more than 30 seconds with an artist to have a viral clip. So once I realized that, that kind of shifted the way that I move. And from there, every event I went to, every carpet I went to, it was always, how can I make the most of this moment? So to answer your question, now, like publicists that are working with really big artists are coming up to me beforehand. Oh, what's Jeremy gonna ask today? Or like, oh, I know you got some for this person. Even to the point where they'll have an artist that isn't gonna stop. Like today there was, shout out to his publicist, but T.I. was there. The carpet was done. And Ryan came up to me and was like, hey, like, I know you probably got some good. I'm just gonna walk by, but just so you know, the carpet's done. He's not doing any more interviews, but basically giving me the heads up, like, I know what you're gonna do. Yeah. So just like do your thing. And I just rapped one of his bars to him. And then I literally ended up walking the whole carpet with T.I. to the end. And he just kept talking and answering my question. And so the reputation that's held there has really helped me get into more rooms, but when I'm in the room, get more respect and opportunity for sure.
For sure. How do you prepare for that, not knowing if you're gonna get to somebody? I mean, that's got to be tough to, prepare for 50 different people.
Yeah,
and
it's tough. So there's two different things I do. The night before or 2 nights before, whenever I have some time, I'll spend 2 to 3 hours going through every single person who's nominated or potentially gonna be there. So it's like nominees, presenters, performers, whatever list they give you. And I'll literally go in through like their Wikipedia and I'll find something that maybe they've never been asked before. Go to the news on Google about them. Go to their Instagram, Twitter, old tweets, song lyrics, whatever I can find about someone, or maybe they did a recent interview, and add to the conversation. So something that hasn't been asked, something that's been asked but not fully explained, or a song lyric that maybe no one's touched on. And I'll like literally make 1 to 2 notes for every single person that's on that list, which could be, like you said, 50 artists. And then the thing is, you get there and half of those artists aren't showing up. And then there's a new crop of people. And they give you this sheet beforehand where like, it's a list of 100 people, let's say, at an award show like this. Not necessarily all award shows, but at this one, or all carpets. But I'll look through and be like, okay, these are ones that I have off top. What do I want to know as a fan? Or it'll be like you'll get somewhat of a heads up. Like if you're in the middle of the carpet, let's say, and you see someone coming, it's like, okay, they're pulling up in like, a couple minutes. What do I have to say to them? So then that's when I like come up with something on my notepad, or I have like a fallback question. But sometimes it's just in the moment. Like Lil Uzi, for example, like one of the biggest clips I've ever had, like probably has like 100+ million views total. And I don't even think I knew he was gonna be there, but we just see him in the corner and I'm like, I know Lil Uzi loves Pop-Tarts because I've just done a lot of like research and stuff. I just know that anyways. What's his favorite Pop-Tart flavor? It's the simplest question. It's not like that's like a groundbreaking question, but it's the way that it's asked and the fact that he knows I know something about him, that he's comfortable enough to come over. Okay, he's not attacking me. He's not here for a headline. This is a genuine interaction.
Yeah, and people like that more, that side of the artist more also than, the salacious type of stuff that you're used to.
Yeah. And I'm not saying I've never done it. There's times where I even feel energetically like maybe I shouldn't have asked that, or maybe I shouldn't have gone there, but I really try to move with character and have an intention and a purpose to what I do that has nothing to do with that. Like my intention is always, how can I be a vessel to help tell this person's story, or bring light to a situation, or bring light to an artist, or bring light to their music, or just bring light to somebody else out there watching. So that's what I move with as my North Star. So anything else might cross intersectionally, but for the most part, it's like, that's my lane. I want to be known for music.
For sure. The other thing, just kind of, building off of that before we get into the real interview, but I want to, the thought process of like going for the clip, you know what I mean, which is something that is super important and, helps you grow a bunch, but I feel like that's, people don't always think about that. So just kind of, how did you get to that point, I guess?
So it took me a little, I've always understood content, but I think with things shifting so quickly from long form to short form, it's changed in the way I've thought about it. So, excuse me. When I first started doing interviews, it was YouTube clips. That's what I was going for. It wasn't really as much short form. There was still Instagram clips, but it was like Twitter was more popping, YouTube was more popping. This was probably like 2017. So there was no Reels, no TikTok. And I remember thinking I would bold questions on my sheet of questions at the time when I would print it out. And I would know the bolded question, no matter what their answer is, it's a clip. Because a yes, a no, a big story, a follow-up, whatever it is, it's interesting enough that that's going to be a clip. Like, for example, when I asked Jeezy, the first big clip I ever had, it was Young Jeezy, and it was an in-studio interview. Yeah, and sure. I asked him how his ad-libs ended up on Can't Tell Me Nothing by Kanye. And that clip is actually so big that it recirculated with Drink Champs recently. Like, I had had that clip like 3 or 4, maybe 5, 6 years ago at this point. And I remember bolding it because no matter what, that story is interesting. Whether it's they just got left on there, whether it's he gave me a call and asked me if I could do the ad-libs, whether it's we were in the studio together and my verse got cut, whatever it is, that's an answer that's gonna be a clip. So I was always thinking that way, but then now I think more in terms of short form. So it's like, okay, 15 seconds, 20 seconds is great. 30 seconds is great. What's going to be engaging and what's going to get right to it? So I think, if I need time to lead into the clippable moment, then I'll do that. I don't just shoot right off the bat like a crazy thing because they might not be comfortable enough to tell me. So it might be that I have a question as like a jab and then I hit you with a right hook after that. So it's like, this is the question, you're comfortable with me. Now it's a clip. Like I said, it's not salacious, but you're comfortable enough that you're willing to rap a verse for me. You know, like a lot of them, like for example, today, I asked a couple people like, you know, what's your most memorable verse ever that you've, you know, recorded and still stands the test of time? And if I know something about them, I'll mention a couple of their verses. Oh, okay, this person's asking me about the music, they care. And then I'll be like, okay, do you still remember it? Boom. Then I just get this person rapping a verse for me, but they might not have been comfortable enough to do it if I was, you know, not leading them into it. But I know in my head, that's the moment. So I definitely know ahead of time, if I'm talking to someone, what can people relate to? What is this person gonna wanna talk about? And then where's the intersection of somebody wants to see this and the artist wants to talk about it? And I think those are like viral moments.
Definitely. So, like I said, I want to, you know, kind of go a little bit back. I mean, I know you told the story, but you grew up in Canada.
Yeah.
In Winnipeg. So, I mean, I'm not familiar at all. So, kind of tell me, what was that like?
So, Winnipeg, Canada is, honestly, it was a nice place to grow up. Like, I had a great family, good friends around me. It was very cold, like very, very cold. The winters are just chilling. Like you that first day it snows, everyone kind of remembers again, like, oh shit, we do this every year. But the thing about it snowing there is it's not like a fun little snow day because you have it every day for the next 5 months, and then it could warm up one day and then snow again. So it kind of makes you a little bit tougher because you have to do everyday life. People go to the club, there's girls waiting in line in skirts. It's crazy looking back on it, but in the winter, you know, you're still going to your friend's house, you're still going on dates, you're still studying or grinding or working or going to the bar, whatever it is. So it kind of toughens you up. And then in the summers, it was really memorable because it was so nice outside for such a short period of time that I remember growing up, you're outside every night till it's dark out. You're going to the park to party, you know, you're in nature, you're biking, you're playing basketball outside. So it kind of taught me to appreciate moments a lot. And when there was stuff that like was memorable, it stands out in my mind a lot. But in terms of music scene, there wasn't like a whole lot. So it was like, there was a couple people who had done it and kind of were at the height of what you could become within the city. And they were doing their thing, but there wasn't that many people that made it out of the city and made a name for themselves, like with the city on their back type thing. I'm not saying there's none. I'm sure like somebody watching from Winnipeg's like, oh, this person, of course, but not that many people to the level that I wanted to be in, and especially no one really that I knew in like the media side of things. So I didn't even know that was like a possibility growing up.
So I mean, that was gonna be my question, is like, with no, that not really being the culture there, how did you get involved into it?
Well, it's
Because
funny.
you started out rapping.
Yeah. So that I just fell in love with like music and hip hop in particular, where I remember being 8 years old and just like finding it and like finding 50 Cent and Eminem and Outkast and like, my mom would play some CDs in the car, my dad would play some music. But I remember when I really found the music for myself was like probably like when I was 15, I want to say 2009 is usually a big year for me to say. Like I had Usher posters on my wall, I had Outkast posters on my wall, Eminem. So it's like before that I had music, but it was really music and sports. I had basketball posters on my wall, LeBron, Wade. But then when I found like Cudi and Drake and Wiz and Big Sean and that blog era of music, I was like, oh, I can relate to these people, because some people use music, I feel like, as like a fantasy, right? Like there's some, if you listen to an NWA album and I'm from the suburbs, I'm not gonna relate at all. But some people, especially like white kids in that area a lot, they use it as like, oh, I'll look into this, culture that they're not a part of, and kind of a lens. I never really viewed music personally as that. I never liked listening to things that much that I couldn't relate to. So when I found things that like, wow, these people are just talking about, I might not be able to relate to Compton in the hood, but I can relate to the emotions that these people are portraying. I can relate to falling in love and falling out of love and chasing dreams and goals and, making music and hanging out with friends. So it's like you see a Mac Miller or you see a Kid Cudi or you see a Drake, whether we're one and the same is a different story, but whether or not I can relate was definitely there. So once I fell in love with that, I was like, okay, where's my community with this? And I think it started online. Like I didn't know anyone who made music. I didn't know anyone who rapped. So I just started rapping and posting YouTube videos. And then I find this whole community of people who are on this app called Tiny Chat. You remember what that was?
Uh-huh.
It was like Skype, but you could just like have a private link. You'd send it to people, and then we'd end up having like 10 rappers in there every night. And it was like people that I still stay in touch with, like Deuce B, this guy, San Diego, who I saw recently, Dana Marr, also from Dago. He's like got like 100 million streams on a song. Cert, I was literally he DM'd me saying he was, inspired by my post today. These are people I met 15 years ago on this app, but we would spend every night together for like 5 hours playing music and rapping. And I don't even think I was very good at the time. I was just like the white kid with a guitar, and I'd rap over my guitar, and I was corny, but they thought I was funny. So I found community online, and then I was like trying to branch out. So I found, a couple other people like in Winnipeg that rap. My guy Miyazwe. There's this kid Lavish who just signed to Chubb's, OVO's label, or Drake's man. And so there was some scene, but again, it was really just like this online. Like I never wanted to just be big in my city. I was like, how do I like make it out type thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, carrying that dream out, you end up in LA. I assume that was the goal, right? When you came out for school, was I'm gonna get somewhere where there is this thing that I'm chasing, right?
Yeah.
Even though
100%.
you probably had to explain to your family, like, I'm gonna go to school out here, right?
Yeah, it was funny because my mom, I remember a conversation. I was probably 21, and I had some success in the city. So like not huge, but I was on the local hip hop station on the radio a couple times. I had some shows with like 100, 200 people. And I had a video that like was viral locally, like probably only 25,000 views on YouTube, but like, it was on the radio. I had a couple performances. I got a couple checks to perform it in certain places. So it's like, I felt a little bit of local success or local fame. I'd go places and people, I fuck with the rapping or whatever, but it wasn't anything crazy. But I never really fully committed to it. Like I always was in school and still pursuing things. It's like I was studying to maybe be a lawyer. I was like, is that what I want to do? I was just trying to figure it out, but I never fully committed to my music dream. So I remember talking to my pops and I was like, Dad, if I just go super hard with the music for a year, like I'll just grind, I'll work it. Like I was a bartender. I was like, I'll just work at the bar for like a year, take time off school, and I just go hard on music. I would love to see where I go. Because I always knew I was going to be successful in my head. It was no doubt in my mind. It was just like, I need to take the steps. And I remember like, he was like, what do you mean? You've been making music for a long time? Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, but I've never gone super hard with it. Like, I've never really put my all into it. And so I remember talking to him. I talked to my mom about it, and I was like, I just need to be somewhere where there's opportunity. I don't know exactly what I want to do in it, but I know I do interviews really well. I know I write really well. I know I can rap really well. I just need to meet the right people. And so I remember when my mom came down and was like, she's like, I feel like you'd be good at PR, like public relations. I was like, I've never really heard of that. So I like looked into it and I was like, oh shit, there's schools. The best PR schools are LA and New York. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna apply. I think I only applied to like 4 schools. I'm just gonna apply to these schools for like a master's degree. And if I could get a scholarship, get some money to go there and get accepted, if I'm in the right area, I'm gonna meet somebody. Like I was so confident in it, but it was like kind of delusional when you think about like that's not necessarily how it works. But like I was like, this is how it's gonna work for me. I don't know.
Yeah, no, for sure. But so you were already thinking kind of like the media space at that point, even?
A little bit. So I didn't necessarily think I wanted to do PR. That was more of like a foot in the door. I could be good at this as a plan B if I need to.
Yeah.
I was never one of those guys with like no plan B. It's just my plan A to B kind of kept fluctuating as to what that plan looked like. There was a lot of plan 8.5s, you know? And so I was like, okay, I have that as a backup if I need. I'm rapping and I still want to be a rapper. At that point, I'm 20, I think I just turned 22. So I still want to be a rapper. And I know I have bars, but I haven't really seriously made songs in a while. I know I can make a good song, but I haven't recorded at a high level in a while. I just kind of started back up with rapping. And I also know I'm a good writer and interviewer because that summer, I was trying to get into a communications program. So I was like, I have no communication stuff on my resume. So I started writing for the school paper and I started doing a couple interviews. And then I found this internship on Twitter for this Respect magazine, which is like Elliot Wilson. He owns it, and it was in New York. And they said I could just do interviews over the phone. So I was just like interviewing. Like I'm trying to think if there's anyone who's still, you know who Marky Basie is? He's like a singer. He was worked with G-Eazy and stuff. Interviewed him at the time. I run into him all the time in LA too now, so it's a cool full circle. Mike Stud, you remember him?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike now. He was one of my first interviews. Oswin Benjamin, this kid who was on Sway in the Morning. So a bunch of people who were like decently big, but not crazy at the time. But to me, it was cool. I was like talking to my favorite rapper, and then at the end, I'd always be like, yo, can I spit something for you? See how it was. And they'd be, yo, you're dope, whatever. So all those interviews did really well on their site, and I had done some articles. So enough to know that, like everyone would be like, that was a really good interview. So enough to know that I was good, but I don't know that I got the validation where I'm like, I could be one of the best at this. I think I was just like, okay, I'm pretty good at this and I'm pretty good at rapping. Like, let's see what happens. Type
Yeah.
thing.
So I mean, when you got to LA, what was the initial, experience? I assume it didn't. You didn't run right into, your big break as soon as you got out, like you thought you might.
Bro, it was so crazy how fast it was. When I tell people, it's like it almost seems like a miracle of some sort, like how impossible things seem from the story. So when I get to LA in September, so I get there in August. In September, first month of school, at USC, so that's where I got accepted. I'm going to USC, studying my master's, got a scholarship there, and I see that there's a charity basketball game from Power.
That was that quick?
September.
Okay.
So a month later. And I started blogging. So I remember I was like blogging literally just for my friends and family back home. But I remember like it was like the most traction I'd ever gotten on any writing because people were like, what? Like these stories are crazy. So I was like just writing about like life being different and people were reading it. So I was like, okay, I'm like gonna go write a blog about my week. And so I started writing a blog and then I remember seeing on Instagram and I think it was like Mike Stud posted that he was a part of this Power 106 charity game. And so I go across the street and make it for the second half of that game. And so yeah, a month in, I'm in this arena with like Chris Brown and Lil Dicky and Mike Stud and all these other rappers, I'm sure that I can't remember, and the people from Power 106. And I remember being like, I gotta meet them. I'm gonna just meet them and get a job at the radio station. Like everyone says, find a mentor. Okay, great. So I ended up sneaking backstage at this charity basketball game, meeting Jay Cruz, who's the morning show host, and he ended up just inviting me to the studio the next day. And there was a lot of trials and tribulations to get to the actual internship. Like it didn't happen overnight for sure, and a lot of like patience or whatever. But that meeting happened within a month. And then I would say a month later for the rapping, I was at Complex Con by myself. I went to like Uber to Long Beach, went by myself, and Camron is just chilling dolo by a Four Loko sponsorship chair. Like he's just sitting in a chair of Four Lokos. And I rap for Camron. I had met like 3 people in LA at that point. One of them I run into at Complex Con, and I was like, yo, I'm gonna go rap for Camron. Can you film it for me? I don't even remember his name. I was if he was watching, like he's a great guy, but he worked for like Nike or something at the time. So he filmed me rapping for Camron, and then Camron was like, yo, that was hard, bro. He's like, I'm not gonna, he's like, where are you from? I was like, Winnipeg. He's like, Winnipeg, I got a bar about Winnipeg. He's like, what you doing out here? I was like, I was going to school. He's like, and you're smart? Oh shit, USC, and you can rap like that, bro. Take my line, like, come to the studio with me. So I'm 2 months in, and I have Camron texting me, and I have Jay Cruz texting me. So pretty high level on the media space and the rapping within a couple months of being here. And I'm like, oh, this is how it goes? Life is easy. Yeah. You just put your mind to something and you go towards it and you attract it. I'm like, oh shit. Like, of course, after that, there's a lot of trials and tribulations. But that first jump reminded me of like, do you ever read the book, The Alchemist?
I haven't.
Great book. But there's this thing in there called beginner's luck. And it was like when you're on your life's purpose and you find exactly what you're trying to do and you're aligned with it, the universe starts giving you signs and doors, and it just starts opening everything up for you. And when things happen fast in that, you're kind of like on the right path.
Sure, yeah, no, I expected some, you got some struggle you got here, and there was, you couldn't meet anybody, you didn't know anybody, but I guess, you put your mind to it. It worked out like you thought it was going to. So as far as getting into that internship, I mean, whatever, time in between happened, but you weren't supposed to be like on the radio at that point, right?
No, so I was just interning in terms of like, my actual job as an intern was really just to have a couple social posts for the Cruise Show Instagram, which probably only had like a couple thousand followers at the time. Get coffee for the hosts and breakfast for the artists, and kind of just sit there and be energetic, like it is early in the morning. They start at 5:30, so you kind of have to like bring the energy up, and you have to be a likable person, so that's part of it. And I would answer phones, so I would be like the person to be like caller 106, so I'd be like caller 1, caller 2, and I would try to make it. I would turn it into a beat. I'd be like, you're caller 1, you're caller 2, 3, 4, and then I'd be like, whoa, you're only 2 off, like, oh, caller 101. So like that was my actual job. But I knew that I wanted to be valuable. Like one of my professors that I also had a TA job at USC, that was part of my scholarship. And his number one rule for success was to be invaluable. So he said, find a way where the people that you want to work with can't work without you. Whatever that is. It could be a thing that they need. It could be a hole in the company that nobody knows how to fill that you're doing. But find a way where like they could look elsewhere, but they need to come back to you. So I took that and I was like, okay, how can I bring my unique skill set to this? What do they need? And initially, when I first met Cruz, I had given him notes for a Chance the Rapper interview, because he was like, oh, you say you do interviews, like let me see what you got. So I sent him interview questions, and he ended up using them on air. But there was like 3 to 5 months in between that Chance interview and me actually applying and getting the internship through like the actual process online. Yeah. So it wasn't like they told me like, hey, this is what we want you to do. But on my first day, we had Migos in the studio after Bad and Bougie, Recipes of Takeoff. And I remember they were just like, can you take some notes on our conversation? And they asked me a couple things. Like at that point, like I was probably more tapped in than them about Migos. Cause like, you know, they just came up, they have a bunch of other shit to do during the day.
Yeah.
But I was in it. I was paying attention, like watching Everyday Struggle every day, you know? So I think I made a bunch of notes, but then I put what they asked, and then I also stayed after and wrote out like interview questions in Cruz's like perspective for like an hour, a couple hours just doing research. And I was just like, hey, before the interview, I printed them all out and I handed them to every host. And I was like, hey guys, I made these for you. Feel free to use them. If I added some extra questions if you want. And I remember like they started using it during the interview. So it was like, oh, they used all the questions. And it's funny because I was using my internship to still try to forward my rap career, because in the elevator after that interview, I rapped for Takeoff. And same thing, he was like, yo, you're fire, bro. Like, this is sick. Like, I ended up like losing it in translation with his manager's phone. Like, he texted me back my own number, and I was like, did you mean to send this to Takeoff? And he's like, nah, I didn't send you back your number. I sent it to Takeoff. And I was like, no, you sent it to me. But I was like, I don't know. I'm new to the city. I don't know how this works. So I just left it. But from there, I was like, okay, they like the questions. It seems like they could use that. And it seems like I'm good at them if they're using them. So there's enough validation for me to think that I'm good. So let me just keep going. So I heard from the front desk Big Sean was going to be in. I was like, yo, I'll send you guys some Big Sean questions. Crew's like, sure, that sounds good. And I remember I sent them questions. And then the next day when I was walking in, the other interns were gluing my questions onto sheets of cardboard for the host to use. I was like, okay, I got it. That's my thing. I'm gonna be the interview strategist. Like, that is what I want to focus my time on. Clearly, I'm good at it. So from there, I just kind of figured out ways to help elevate them and learn and listen and talk when spoken to, and every once in a while add something valuable. And they just would give me opportunities. Like, you'd see people who would come in as interns and would be a little bit hungry for attention, or, you know, that was clearly their goal to get on air, but they would force the moment. And I really tried to stay back and be like, whenever the moment comes to me, I'm ready for the moment, but I'm not gonna ask for it. And they would let me ask questions, you know, ask Majid Jordan a question on air, and they're like, that's a great question. I talked to DJ Khaled once on air, because I had rapped for him at a book signing, my rap and media stuff. And so I freestyled on air a couple times. So they would just give me opportunities because they knew that that's what I wanted. But at the end of the day, they really kept coming back to me for like those questions, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of like parlayed into, I guess, after you got done with school, you started working for Before They Were Famous.
Yeah. So,
and I get that makes a lot of sense now, because you were the interview research guy.
Yeah. All the things in my life and career have led up to each other, whether I knew it or not in the moment. But like doing so many interview researches, I was a good student of someone and what they like, what their tics are, what they would want to be asked, what their career journey was. So I was good at kind of finding a narrative arc about somebody in question format. So doing it for a biography for a Before They're Famous video was kind of like a natural transition. But I was graduated, and Power 106 wasn't going to give me a visa because I am Canadian too, so I need to actually stay in America. So that was top of my mind. I wasn't really worried about school. I wasn't really worried about, like, you know, necessarily networking with my peers. It was like, how can I network up and meet somebody to give me a visa? So I remember, like, I was working an internship for this company that was a PR company in, like, they were doing car PR and they were doing health PR and they were doing gaming PR, but no music. There was music splashes here and there, but it really wasn't something I loved. So I was doing interviews on the side, just trying to like build my own brand and like meet people and connect with them. And I remember my brother sent me Michael's name and his email. I had a spreadsheet going, so I'd have like name, email, whether or not they replied to my email, what I sent them, if we scheduled an interview date. Probably had like 500 contacts in there, mostly no's, mostly reds, some yellows, which was a maybe, and then a couple greens, which was a yes. So Timothy De La Ghetto was the first yes I got. He let me interview him at USC using their media room. And then Michael was one of the first ones too, probably first 5 that I did. And at the end of the interview, he was like, oh, you're a great research guy. You're a great idea guy. We got to get you on the team here. And like, he said it kind of jokingly. I wasn't like, I took that and was like, I got a job here. But then 4 or 5 months later, I was just posting Instagram videos of my interviews and making, like, we were talking about clips, even though they weren't viral. I had a couple big clips on my Instagram, with no followers, but like the content was good. So I had like 1,000 followers, 1,500 followers maybe. But one of them was Michael's manager at the time. And he hit me on email and was like, hey, I've been seeing what you're doing. Love like your personality, love your research. We're looking for a new host. Do you want to join the team? And I remember like getting the email and being like, fuck it, yeah. Like, he's like, okay, we need to do a test run. Like, you need a green screen, you need lights, you need a camera, a mic, and then you need to just write a script. So they gave me a test of like vocal first. Like, I just did an on-camera test of a script they wrote about Noah Cyrus at the time. And then they're like, that was great, can you write a script? So I was like, sure. So I wrote this script for Corday. And I remember like before my internship, I was like 6:30 a.m. I think I woke up at like 5 to get there and just like write this script in the Starbucks beforehand. I was like, listening to all his interviews, listening to his music, sent them the script back, bought a green screen from Amazon, bought some lights. I had a camera that my grandparents got me for my birthday a couple years before. And I sent them the script and they were like, when do you want to start? I was like, okay. So I remember I just started and I was like, it was crazy because I went from having my interview with Michael on my page probably had 500 views, 200 views, something like that. I might have had videos that had 100K or something from my rapping back in the day, like covers and stuff, but nothing that was just off of my pure like content.
Yeah.
And I went from 200 views to 2 million views in like a week. It was like the audience was there already and the people we're talking about are already gonna be big. Like, there was videos with 100,000, 300,000, 500,000. I remember I hit my first 1 million views and I'm like, holy shit, like I'm in the game, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of lost in that. I want you to explain like where your headspace was, the transition from, you know, coming out here to be a rapper to just kind of taking the opportunity that was, you know what I mean, there for you and running with that.
So I'm trying to think of when it really shifted. I think I was still making music while I was interning. Like I said, I was still rapping for people. Like I rapped for Camron, Takeoff. I rapped for DJ Khaled. I rapped for DJ Carnage. I still would rap for people when I get the chance to. And I made songs in 2018. Summer of 2018 was the last time I recorded songs when I was living in Toronto for the summer. And they were pretty good songs. Like I listened back to one of them the other day. Like, they would still hold up as like a hook or something like that. Like the verses were by no means bad. But I think seeing how quickly things progressed in media made me realize like maybe that's where my purpose is right now and I should follow it. Like, it was almost like, let me not fight the universe. It's not like I was getting no opportunities as a rapper. Like I said, there's people giving me validation. And I'm sure if I put more into maybe the marketing side of things, like maybe it bubbles up a little more. But when things happen so quickly in media, I started to kind of look back at things and be like, oh, I'm a storyteller, but maybe it's not my story to tell right now. Like, maybe I'm the vessel for other people's stories, because every time I'm helping tell an interview, I insert my personality in myself, but it's what is their message for the world? How can I get that to people? And even my most heartfelt song that I ever wrote was from the perspective of a kid who was going to commit suicide, you know, based on a real story. And a different kid later on told me that song saved their life. So I was like, oh, even my most powerful writing is coming from the perspective of others. So I was like, let me just follow that fully and like dive in. It wasn't like I wasn't writing ever, but I really did commit probably like during that media era of before they were famous, like, let me go all in and like tunnel vision and see where it goes. Definitely.
And then so from there, is that when you went to Power 106 back with Just Incredible?
So I was working for Before They're Famous. I end up at a red carpet for, no, okay. So I ended up at a red carpet for Power 106 that nobody else could go to, none of the other hosts. So this is like latter of my internship, maybe like towards the end of it, but they let me do my own red carpet. At the red carpet, it's just me and a camera. So I'm my own videographer. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm literally like that. That's probably the most like starstruck I've been in my life of a situation. Like I've never been on a carpet before. I've never really met celebrities on my own. I've met them through the radio station, and I've definitely never interviewed them. But I'm just thrown into the ring, and like MGK, Exhibit, Will Smith, it was his premiere. I asked him a question, he answered it. I was like, oh shit, like everyone at the station was proud of me. They're like, oh, look at him go. And next to me at that carpet was HipHopDX. So they were following, again, it's all about the eyes watching you. It's like, I always say that to young people, like if you're looking at what to do next, just do whatever you're good at, do whatever you're passionate about with the resources you have. Don't worry about gaining a following, because one eye could be way more valuable than a million if that eye has power to give you an opportunity or money or a situation or put you in position to do what you're wanting to do next. So HipHopDX, Jason, who was head of their video team, watching my videos, saw I was working for Before They're Famous, hit me up and was like, hey, let's meet for coffee. So we meet for coffee, and I pitched him a script idea I was working on about Drake and Trey Songz, and how Trey Songz actually brought Drake to America, gave him his first big feature. And he's like, that sounds dope. Can I use it for HipHopDX? Are you willing to sell it? So I sold it to him for like $100, maybe $75, like nothing. But that got me in the door at HipHopDX. And then from there, I ended up doing their interview shooting. I didn't really know how to shoot, but I taught myself how to use a camera. And I was giving them interview questions too. So I give them interview questions as well. And I end up getting a full-time job there. And like I was telling you about the Jeezy interview, that was one where the host couldn't show up. I had all the questions made, and I was just like, let me do it. And with some resistance, they end up letting me do it. And the clips went viral, so I just kept kind of going with them. And like I said, none of this is as clean as it sounds. There's a lot of like patience, waiting, emails, back and forth, job interviews, stuff like real stuff.
Yeah.
But once I get that job, Cruz texted me and said, hey, I'm gonna put you in touch with someone from Power. They're looking for somebody, you'd be good for it. And so he was like trying to put me in position for another opportunity. And I remember I met with Justin Credible, and I met with his show producer. I had a call with the show producer, and he was like, yeah, come to the studio. I sat in on a show, and then I had a one-on-one meeting with Justin. And I'm still, at that point, like, these are rooms that are still kind of crazy to be in.
Yeah.
It's like, I still remember watching LA Leaker freestyles on my YouTube page back home. So I'm still like, this is cool. And especially Justin, like, being in the space, like being a Jewish white guy, like at the top of the rap game, I'm like, oh shit, like this is like someone I can like look to for inspiration. Like this is cool that I'm even in the same room. And I remember he like offered me a job as his assistant producer, I want to say, on the show. So it would have been every night, 8 to 2, Monday through Sunday. I think it was every night. So I had a day job. I was working for HipHopDX. Maybe I didn't have a full time at HipHopDX. I was doing Before They're Famous stuff. I was doing some HipHopDX stuff, enough to stay in the country on my visa, because they're American. Before They're Famous was from Toronto. And then I would have had that night shift. And I remember thinking about it very hard, because I was like, I could do that. I kind of do that now in a lot of ways. I have a day job and I have nights that I work. But I remember being like, I don't think I can, because it's not adding to what I want to do. Like, it would have been kind of a similar position to what I was helping Cruz with. Like, I think I would have helped with content. I think I would have maybe gotten on the air a couple times. Like, I think I would have been integrated into the show. But it wasn't necessarily like elevating. And I remember I told him no. And he really respected it. Like, he was like, you could have just done it for the sake of it, because like this is an opportunity, but I respect the fact that you said no. And I always contrast it because Cruz's advice initially was say yes to everything. And this was the first no that I consciously made, like to any big opportunity. I was saying yes to everything. So I said no to that, but we stayed in touch, and I was like, I'd love to help out in any other way though. Like I can't commit full-time hours to this, but I'm around, you know, if you have artists or whatever you need help with. Again, how do you become invaluable? And for him, I remember he was like, he said to me, he's like, I can see where you're going and I know your potential, and some people are scared of that. He's like, there's people in my position that wouldn't want you around because you'd be a threat, or you'd be competition, or you'd make them insecure ego-wise. But he's like, I don't care about any of that. I care about where I'm going and what I want to do, and I want you around for it. So he ended up sending me stuff like, hey, I got this artist in, or DaBaby's in, or 2 Chainz in, or whatever. And I'd come to the studio and I would, you know, again, I'm in the background, like this is for them. Like, how can I help you? And so I would just give them questions, give them content, give them ideas. I help them with show ideas every once in a while. Like, here's news, here's how to tie this news into this. Cause they're so, but he's DJing. They don't have time to do all the little shit sometimes. So it's like me being so entrenched in it, I can just give you this, this, and this, and you can run with it in your own way. And I've worked with him ever since. Like that was 2018, which is crazy. And we still work together. I still send him stuff sometimes. He'll still chop it up with me about ideas. You know, we work on a pretty consistent basis. And even 5 years later, he DJ'd at our Grammy Week event. And it was because of that relationship that we had for 5 years, you know.
That's dope. So how do you get into that kind of, I mean, the transition, I guess, between, you know, kind of talking your way into getting an interview versus like taking a forward role at HipHopDX?
So after the Jeezy interview, I basically put together a presentation, and it was like, because sometimes people don't really know what you do until you show them what you do. So I remember the founder, I had met him a couple times, and he's actually from Winnipeg too, which is crazy, and I didn't even know that when I started working with them, but some stuff is like divine, I don't know. So I remember I was talking to him, and I was like, here's what I did for this interview. I did all the interview notes. I did the interview. I edited the interview. I edited the clips. I uploaded the interviews and titled them and headlined them. I sent out the clips to Def Jam, Complex, writers I knew, marketed the clips, and it went viral. Who else can do all those things for you in one job? And I remember I put together like slideshow, and I was like, I can do that for you for every interview. Like, just let me know. And I remember they were like, okay, like just do a couple more. And the next one I did was a Shoreline Mafia interview, and that went viral. I think it hit like 500K views or something like that. And then they just kept being like, okay, like again, make yourself invaluable. We can't get anyone else where the artists are walking out and being like, that was the best interview I've ever done. So I was like, okay, they didn't necessarily have full-time budget for just an interviewer though. So I was doing that. I was doing some content coordination, some editorial stuff, some organizational management stuff, some, you know, just day-to-day numbers, data. But so there's more than enough to do, but mainly I was like, okay, let me get this interview thing going. And then once it just kept picking up, they just kind of kept trusting me with it.
For sure. And on your side of things, I mean, how does it feel to be like in that situation where you're consistently, you know, obviously you've put in the work and, you know, you're preparing for stuff, but everything's going well, you know what I mean? As far as, not everything, but you know what I mean? Like you got a lot of stuff that's resonating with people and doing well online and stuff like that, you know.
It's surreal. It's still surreal. I still don't I don't take it for granted. Like when I'm sitting in those rooms and in my initial interviews and I'm interviewing like Jadakiss and Yellow Wolf and who else was the early one, and Jeezy and all these people that I grew up listening to, that like legends that maybe 1% of music journalists would talk to in their career.
Yeah.
I don't take it for granted. I remember being the game. I remember sitting there and being like, oh my God, this is great. Like me in my head, it's like, what is happening right now? I'm just this like kid from Canada and I'm interviewing the biggest rappers in the world and people are watching it and clips are going viral and like my voice is being heard by this many people and I'm impacting the conversation more than anything. Like people are answering questions that I asked and debating, and it's on the Joe Budden podcast and Genius and Complex. I'm like, what is happening? Like literally I couldn't you could tell my younger me because I was like believing in myself, but you couldn't explain this properly and me have a full understanding. So like it was, what the fuck is exactly what I was thinking. And I remember like it took so long to even get out of that mode. It took so long for me to even get in the like I belong here. Like imposter syndrome was like a year's worth of that. Like it was like elevating to the point where I'm like, even before they're famous, like getting viewed by 2 million people or whatever it was. It's like, oh my God, like what? I could have only dreamed to be viewed by 1 million people. And then you really think numbers wise and you're like, you've been viewed by like, if I looked at numbers of just pure numbers of like, who knows if that's a real person or not, but just pure numbers of like 500 million to 1 billion views total of things that I've created or helped be a part of. And it's like, that is so many people. Like that's so many people that I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. So it's like, I try to balance it because I can't be that kid every day. If I'm always that kid, like at every opportunity, then I'm still saying yes to everything and I'm like still kind of holding myself back. Like, oh sure, I'll do this, this, and this, and this. But so it's like, I'm here, okay, I'm appreciative of this. I appreciate this level, but I know where I want to take it next and I have to focus on that and kind of like turn down things that don't align with getting there. So now it's like, okay, even today, I'm like, I'm so grateful to be here. But then once I'm in it, like it feels normal. Like as normal as something can feel that's still surreal. So I don't know, it's like a balance of gratitude and keeping my eyes open to like what is happening and just meshing it into like presence.
Absolutely. So how did you get into filmmaking? Like where did that come from? That's kind of out of, I mean, it's the same, I understand it, like, you know, from a storytelling perspective and, you know, it makes a lot of sense, but it's a different, you know, realm.
Yeah. No, that was very different. That was for sure the most challenging thing I've done creatively, where I'm like out of my element. Like you said, it was in a sense, because yes, I know how to tell a story. I know how to conduct interviews. I know what makes a good, you know, arc, and I know what makes a good piece of content. So it's like start to finish, I know how to put together something that you're gonna watch because that's how I would conduct my interviews too. A lot of times at that time, it was like, let me take you back here, kind of like what we're doing now, right? Getting to a point and then like there's a conclusion. So I was like, all right, I know how to do that, but I don't know how to make a documentary. So it's funny because I remember at the top of the year, I remember writing in my notebook, I want to make, but I think I wrote in present tense. I think I said, I will make a documentary with one of the biggest artists in the world. I might have said for streaming service, but I think I just wrote, I will make a documentary about one of the biggest artists in the world about a specific album or time period. That's what I wrote. And I didn't have any names in mind, really. I just kind of put that out there. And so I was like, I don't know how to make a documentary. So let me try making a couple mini documentaries. So I remember Black Youngsta had a Zoom interview scheduled with us. This was during the pandemic. It was very inconsequential. Like I could tell he wasn't gonna put that much effort into the Zoom interview. So we ended up doing a 15-minute Zoom interview where he was in bed, shirt off, smoking a blunt, like not paying attention to the camera. And I was like, okay, if I can make something out of this and chop it into something interesting, like maybe I'll figure out how to make a documentary. So I hit up my boy Sage, who was editing our interviews, still edits our interviews, great editor. And I was like, man, like if I write a script and narrate it and voice it over, can I send it to you and we can piece together some B-roll and make it into like a 10-minute piece that's like kind of a mini doc about his life. he's like, yeah, let's do it. So I remember I chopped it together. I wrote a script out, narrative it, like input clips and stuff. And I wrote it like a script like I did with Before They're Famous, where there's clips for the editors with time codes. And then I remember I sent it to him and we got it up and didn't do anything crazy. Like it was probably at like 20, 25,000 views, which again, to me is like relative to the things that I was doing at the time. But I remember like, wow, this was a cool piece. I remember people were commenting like, oh, this is cool to see. It was, I think I titled it like the man behind the social media persona, like the real Black youngster. It's like, okay, this is cool. So I know how to do this. So I was confident at least that I could put something together with found footage, with interviews. So HipHopDX gets bought by Warner Media in 2020. And nothing really changed that much, but they basically were like, you know, we'll throw you some artists here and there to support, or if there's ever anything you can do for our artists at Warner, great. If not, you have to change the way you do interviews or change anything artistically or journalistically. So I was like, okay, maybe we'll get some opportunities. So 2020 or 2021, pandemic's like kind of ending, but still going on. The anniversary of Rolling Papers for Wiz was coming up, and they were like, hey, Catalog sent us over this request, and this guy, Kevin Hoffman, great dude who works kind of intermediately between Warner and HipHopDX and like their owned and operated properties, and he put our name in like, yo, HipHopDX would be good for this. So they're like, hey, we have 3 weeks to do this. We have 20,000 files from Wiz's tours and day-to-days and his old footage. Can you put something together that kind of commemorates Rolling Papers? And so I looked at it and I remember being like, there's a lot of files here, like a lot of files here. And I remember, I don't know when the idea became like super big, but at this time it was still just like, okay, let me put together a narrative. I didn't really want to narrate it because I was like, it doesn't feel right for me to narrate this Wiz piece, but I was like, let's see if I can chop some stuff together. And then I talked to Kevin and Wiz's manager, and I remember I put together a proposal, like, what if we turned it into a little bit of like a mini documentary? Here's like the storyline. And I remember going back into his career and like condensing a storyline into like a 10, 15 minute piece. And I presented to them over Zoom, and he's like, I love it, let's go, let's do it. I was like, okay. So I was like, if Wiz could be involved, that'd be amazing, but like obviously no pressure. He's like, I'll tell you what, if it gets to the point where, you know, it's good enough that I'll present it to Wiz, I will. I'm sure he'd be down. So I was like, all right, can we get some interviews going? And I remember being like, we interviewed Chevy Woods, and we interviewed, I think maybe I interviewed his mom over Zoom and a couple people. And it was kind of like a little buzz in their circle, like, oh shit, we're talking about this time period again. People are getting excited. Chevy was talking about it in the studio. It actually made Wiz, I believe, go dig up the old Nipsey verse that he had for Rolling Papers that made it on the deluxe, because I asked Chevy about it. I read it somewhere and they were talking about it. And Blair, who was the director at the time, remember we were shooting a video interview in the office, and this is pandemic, so we had masks on and everything. And I remember telling him about like, yo, I got this potential opportunity. I know you want to like direct films and stuff. Well, we got this doc with Wiz. I would love for you to edit it. And you know, his artistic vision was even far beyond what I could have imagined at the time, where he had already seen the project in his mind as being like this big thing. I was kind of like still in like, oh, maybe it's like this little 10-minute piece. But long story short, we kind of just figured it out along the way, and he kept stretching the vision into like a real like cinematic documentary. And you know, by the time Wiz heard about it, he was like, I would love to be a part of this. Like he asked, you know, he's like, let me do an interview and, you know, use whatever you want from me. And so he let us in the studio, and we did like an hour 15 interview with him and got everything we needed. And he basically narrated his own, you know, documentary, and got 2 million views, nominated for film festivals, short film festivals, like multiple, was in contention for the Oscars even based on one of the film festivals. So it's crazy because it's like you start to stretch your mind and be like, I can do whatever I want, but it's just like, it's gonna take work, it's gonna take learning. It was a stressful experience. Like me and Blair even got into it a couple times, and you know, since then we've talked everything out and realized like why that was so stressful is because it was just like such a magnitude of a project. It was just such a big thing that we knew could be so great. So it was like, by the time it was finished, we were like exhausted artistically, but it was so worth it. So it's like, I didn't think about being in film. It was never a goal of mine at all. But now that I'm doing it, I'm like, okay, I would love to produce more documentaries and tell artist stories, or even tell stories outside of just like, you know, a musician.
Definitely. So I feel like we definitely need to touch on kind of the way that, I mean, we all got connected, you know what I mean? So how long have you known Jordan?
I've known Jordan since 2018.
Okay. And so you guys met at a something dope event, or explain that to me?
No, we met in a crazy way. Me and Jordan met through Hollywood Boulevard and through one of my childhood crushes. It was a crazy story. So this is 2018, I believe. Maybe earlier. No, this is like 2017, maybe 2016. And this girl that I knew from Winnipeg was coming into town, and I had a crush on her for like a long time. But like, it was one of those, you know, there's girls that's like, I don't really care to make a move necessarily, but it's like, I always joke about like, oh, that's the love of my life. Like, it was like just a joke, but like I never actually made a serious move. She always had a boyfriend, I always had a girlfriend. And then she was coming to LA, and I remember like she was recently single, and so was I. And I was like, oh shit, stars aligned. And she hit me and was like, oh, I'm gonna be in LA. You know, I'm staying with my mom, but she said I could go out after 10 p.m. or something. So like, cool. She's like, want to go to Hollywood Boulevard? And then this time I don't even know LA. I'm like, you don't really want to bar hop on Hollywood Boulevard. It's a little bit gross down there sometimes. But I was like, sure. She picked me up in Uber. We're on Hollywood Boulevard. She's super lit, like super lit. And I'm pretty lit, but not that lit. And I remember Kendrick, they were playing like a Kendrick song. It might have been All Right or something outside of one of the bars. And me and these two dudes on Hollywood Boulevard just started, I was like, I saw them rapping and I joined in, and they're like, who is this white kid rapping? And we just like started rapping together. And then we were freestyling, and all this happening while she's in there buying me a drink or buying herself a drink. And then she sees them and she buys them shots. And they're like, oh, y'all are cool. Like, do you want to come party with us? And I was like, okay, sure. So we go party at 1 a.m. at these two random dudes' apartments in Hollywood Boulevard. And it wasn't even a party, it was just us four. So we're just like playing beer pong or something or talking. And this girl falls asleep on the couch. And I'm like, fuck. Like, I can't leave this girl with... And I didn't even make a move. I didn't even go for the kiss. I didn't even say that I liked her. Nothing. I was like, my big moment ruined. And these two guys were like, oh, you guys could stay here. So I just slept on the other couch. I remember I got a text from her mom in the morning, like, I was like, where's my daughter? And like, she probably still doesn't even believe me to this day. I'm like, she's sleeping on the other couch of this. I didn't want to leave her there, whatever. I never met her mom, but bless her soul. And so the reason why that's important is, again, just the people that watched my Instagram. I started posting more rapping again and freestyles. And then I was doing like themed raps. I did like a theme of The Office rap, and I was like doing stuff like that it was before TikTok, so it was like just Instagram and YouTube and stuff like that. And then one of the guys we met on Hollywood Boulevard, David, he saw I was rapping and he was producing, and he was like, hey, come over and make a song with me. I'll make a beat. He was doing this series where he would like make the beat on the spot, and then within an hour you'd have to like write and record, and it would be like him on two sides. One of them was like him producing on the drum pad. One of them was like him playing the keys, and then you'd be in the middle rapping with a mic. So I went over and did that, and it was probably like a year later, like a full year, maybe 2 years later. We just followed each other and made that song, and his roommate is Jordan, and they started something dope together, David and Jordan. And so they were throwing events, but I didn't know until I talked to David this year about it, and he said he was trying to get me and Jordan to meet for like a long time. He said like, I kept being like, you gotta meet my friend Jeremy, like you guys would get along so well, because I kept running into David. LA's a big place. But like I would run into him so randomly at the mall. I ran into him at the club like twice with two different girls. We were like at this time. It was like we just kept running into each other. And so finally I meet Jordan, and And I honestly don't remember from there, like when we became friends, but I just remember we just like got along really well and like stayed in touch.
Gotcha. And then so he just asked you, hey, you know, you're charismatic guy. Can you come MC these events?
It didn't even happen right away. Like I remember he asked me to pull up to one of the events, and I remember me and my ex at the time were in a fight, and I remember like being like, nah, I'm going to this event anyways, like whatever, she want to come. And so I go to the event alone, and I remember meeting so many people, like just like tons, like people that are still around, like Bundy, like who hosted with us yesterday, like Rocco, Criddle, Fly on a Boss, who performed at our ladies night the other night, and they're blowing up on Instagram. Like I saw them perform that night. So I met so many people, and there's a picture I have of me and Jordan talking. It literally looks like we're like talking about like strategizing, taking over the world. I don't know what we were talking about, but I think we were just like vibing, and I loved the events. And so I just kept going. So post-pandemic, they took a break during pandemic for events, or they did a couple, but not like crazy. Post-pandemic, when things opened up, they were at this burger restaurant called Black Star Burger, and they were throwing events in the burger restaurant. So it was like, they'd have like a stage and like vendors on one side, there's performances, and I would just pull up every time. Like I was freshly single, like I was trying to make more friends and be in the scene a little more and like just support Jordan, what they were doing. So I would just pull up every weekend and be a part of the crew. I wasn't really helping, I was just kind of there. And somebody in the bathroom once was like, hey man, is this a club or a bar? And I was like, I'll do you one better, it's a burger restaurant. And I told Jordan, we were laughing. But anyways, that was 2021, and he asked me, yeah, he was like, you know, you do interviews, you're a good host, like, do you want to host one of the events? And I'd always wanted to help, but again, I don't want to force opportunities, I just want to provide value where there is a lane for it. So I was like, yeah, sure. So me and Bundy, I think, hosted an event. It's funny, my girl now was at that event when we were like just like seeing each other. So she saw my first ever hosting event. And I'm sure I was okay, but I remember one of the bartenders there told me, he's like, it's funny, I remember when you first started hosting, he's like, you've gotten so much better. He's like, when you first started hosting, you felt the need to yell. Now you walk on stage and you're basically whispering and the crowd's like tuned in. And it's funny because you don't realize it, like anything you progress in, you feel like you're good at it in the moment because you have to have enough confidence to put something out there. But then you look back and you're like, oh, I got a lot better. So from there, it wasn't really until 2022 that I started becoming like a real like full host with them. And it was kind of out of semi-passion, semi-like circumstance. Like I think I asked, like we were coming up with ideas, and I think I was like, oh, like what if we did a karaoke night, or like I just wanted to host a karaoke night. So we hosted one of those, and Jordan was throwing like, it was this weekend last year, like it was, or maybe the weekend before, like so Juneteenth weekend 2022. And I think Jordan had done like 4 events, and I was like talking to him in the car, and I remember he was so exhausted. He was like, bro, like we just did so many events, didn't make that much money, like what am I doing? Like he's like, maybe I should stop doing events. And I had brought him into HipHopDX to do some interview shooting too, so like we were working together like here and there on stuff, and I think we did a couple maybe festivals or a couple trips together through that. And so I think we were in Vegas for something, for a festival that he was shooting, I was doing interviews at. And I remember he was like, what if we did an open mic? Because we had 700 submissions of artists that wanted to perform, but booking the artists, and it was like, there was only 5 artists who could get on a night, you know, max. So Jordan's like, what if we did an open mic and just sent out an email blast to all these artists and be like, your chance to get on stage now is something dope. And we didn't realize how strong the community already was, or at least I didn't. Maybe Jordan did, because he had cultivated the community already for years. But that first open mic, we had like 40 or 50 people there, and it just felt special. It was like, wow, this is like something cool. Like I couldn't even tell you exactly what I said, or if I did a lot of the things that I do now, I don't remember, but I'm sure it was just a similar vibe and very open and welcoming, and people were kind of enjoying themselves and getting on stage. And we did, I don't even know if we did a raffle. I think we might have done a raffle. We just like, whoever, you know, gets a ticket gets a ticket, and we'll just pull names from the bucket. And then we're like, let's do it again. That was cool. So we did it the next week, and then like 100 people showed up. We're like, oh, this is cool. And it was maybe week 3 or 4 that we did. It wasn't in a row, but like, you know, we did a couple weeks here, a couple weeks there. But maybe we did 2 weeks in a row or 3 weeks in a row. And it was one of those weeks when we looked at each other and we were like, whoa, like what is happening? It was like a sold out event. And there was like 300 people or 250 people in there. And we're like, oh my God, this is an open mic? What? Like we got something crazy. And then from there, I was just all the way in. Like I loved the energy of that community. I love what Jordan's vision is. Like I trust him as a leader and as a friend. And I was just like, let's just take this wherever we can, and whatever I can help bring to the table, let's just take it to the moon.
Yeah, I mean, it was, you know, we got to go to the event last night, and I keep saying dope, and I feel corny, but it's super cool. You know, like the community that you guys have built, and everybody's real locked in and supportive of everybody, and you know, stuff like that, which is
hard to find out here. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know out here. It's definitely hard to find. We're
everywhere.
So that, you know, it's super cool. I kind of skipped over it. I need to ask you. You got a lot of huge moments. I just want to know if you have like one that stands out as like either that was the craziest, you know, thing, or like your favorite moment of all your, you know, big, you know, clip stuff.
Interviewing Kevin Gates was one of them, because I'd had a lot of interviews go viral for stories, but I hadn't had a lot of clips go viral for messages. And that was the first time where I feel like I spoke to someone as my true self. Like it was very like spiritual conversation. It was very like energetically based, and we were just kind of vibing off of each other. And there's so many clips that like are on like spiritual pages and like manifestation pages that I see pop up still to this day that have like millions of views. That it's cool that came from that conversation, that who knows the impact that had on somebody seeing that in the morning or going through a bad day. So that's very meaningful to me. In terms of like fun, like obviously the Uzi Pop-Tart clip is amazing. Like Kodak Black and having the same birthday as him, like that was great. That was like, I remember Jordan said I should give him my ID, so I just like literally handed him my ID and was like, Kodak, we have the same birthday. And I hand him the ID, and then he's like, oh, what's up, twin? And then like from there, he's like obviously open to talk, and we had like, it was like 3 or 4 clips that had millions from that. Wiz is one. Jeezy, obviously, because that was my first big interview. And then interview I did with this rapper XV from the blog era, because that was personally like, it was before I was doing any interviews for HipHopDX, but I remember I just DM'd him on Twitter. I had like 1,000 followers, and he's like, yeah, sure, pull up to the show, come ask me some questions. And when I tell you I had like burning questions, like this guy was like in the same class as Wiz, Big Sean, Drake, and then just like disappeared for 10 years. So I was like, what is happening with this guy? Like I just needed to know personal. Me and my friend Josh back, I'm like, just needed to know personal answers. So I remember like getting to hear what was going on in his mindset was just so rewarding, of like, like as a fan, I can have closure to this chapter. This TV show can at least end in this season, and there's a new season, you know, in his life. But that was definitely a big moment, like personally. No, it probably has 2,000 views on YouTube, but like for me, I'm like, yeah, that's meaningful.
For sure. Is it weird to be scrolling Instagram or TikTok or something and see something from 3 years ago pop up that you did?
Yeah, it's weird. It's weirder. I don't like, I'm numb to it in a sense, because a lot of like, even like with the Something Dope stuff, it's like we make so much content that like I just see it a lot. Like I see my face everywhere in that sense, and people will DM me being like, yo, I didn't know you did this, or I didn't know, like it really made me numb to going viral, because I've gone viral for bad stuff, for good stuff, for stuff that I wanted to go viral for stuff I intended to, stuff I didn't intend to. Like I got memed off of this Playboy Cardi thing when I was at Before They're Famous, that you've probably even seen and didn't even know it was me. But I used to do like bad puns at the beginning of videos with song titles. So that his was like, before he was pulling up in a fort and he was something with his stomach hurt. Like, it was like all of the things that a Playboi Carti fan would know, but it was in a sentence that made sense. And I would do it in like a lot of videos. I probably did like 10 or 15 videos like that, but I would be very over the top. And so they cut that clip before you could really tell, like, okay, I was like kind of joking a little bit. And I remember it went viral of like, this is why Playboi Carti isn't dropping his album. Like, Playboi Carti fans be like this with all the butterfly emojis. And I remember like waking up the next day and being like, what is happening? Like, people are tweeting me, oh, is this you? Texting me like on Instagram, DMing me. And I remember like, I'm like, fuck, like, obviously it doesn't feel good. Like, I'm being made fun of. So I remember being like, how do I respond? So I was like, whatever, I'll just lean into it. So I like leaned into it and I like made a clip of like, I was like, there's more where this came from, and just like cut together like 10 of the different videos that I punned people in the front. And I would just lean into it. Like, I'd make a joke every time I'd see it. There's that. There was, I made a song for the Winnipeg Jets playoff run once where I did a remix to Old Town Road with a green screen. But again, I was being pretty over the top, kind of joking around. Like, the bars were okay. It wasn't like an awful song, but I was like dancing. I was like, you know what I mean? I was vibing like a little over the top. And I remember St. Louis Blues fan account, or not a fan account, a Barstool employee at the time, big account, retweeted it and said St. Louis in 4. And that was when they were playing each other. And I remember like people from my own city were like commenting on the post, this sucks. People I know. Somebody was like, this is awful. Like, Jets are losing because I'm like, bro, I know I went to school with you. What? So I remember like, again, that was another one where it's like, I just became so, like, I remember DMing people who were like hate messaging me. I don't know, like, I'd be like, sending you love. And like one person was like, you should kill yourself. I remember responding being like, do you really think that? And they're like, yeah, you should. I'm like, okay, those people are unsavable. But most people would be like, oh, I'm just kidding or whatever. You'd respond to them on Before They Famous account. And they'd be like, oh, well, actually you're doing a good job. So I was so numb to like going viral in one way or another that it was like, all right, all I can do is like my best work. And if it reaches people, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But like, I left it all on the floor type of thing.
For sure. So I feel like I've probably taken up way too much of your time, and I'm sorry. But before we get out of here, other than the 5 or 6 viral clips that I'm sure are gonna come out tonight, is there anything that we need to be looking forward to in the immediate future?
Immediate future, I'm very excited for wherever something dope goes. I know there's going to be bigger events, there's going to be a tour, there's going to be a label side. So I'm really excited to just continue growing that with Jordan and the team. I'm excited for more documentaries. Not immediately, nothing like locked in, but I know there's more coming. Pause. And I'm definitely excited to get back into music. I know that's kind of where we started in the interview, but I have some songs that I've written that are more like art pieces in the sense of like not being super like posh, like they're art pieces, just in the sense of like you wouldn't consume it necessarily in a casual way. It's more of a listen of like, this is just straight bars the whole way through, some melody, but it's very much like paying attention to what I'm saying, and the visuals will like portray what I'm saying in a very unique way. So people have been telling me when I tell them the idea of the song that they really like it enough where I'm like, okay, not that I need external validation, but sometimes when I say an idea enough to people and it resonates with a lot of people, I'm like, okay, it's the right time to put that out. So I'm definitely looking forward to like the music side of things too. And yeah, just wherever life takes us. I don't know.
So this was all a long play just to get back to the rap.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, oh, now I have some clout. Now you're gonna listen. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. Well, like I said, bro, I don't want to hold you up too much. I appreciate you taking time and sitting down with us. Letting us come out to the event yesterday and everything. So. Excited to see what you got in the future, bro. No, thank you, and I appreciate you, and obviously appreciate Deshaun. Like, our TikTok content for Something Dope wouldn't be anywhere close to, we had 100 followers, I think 123 followers. This guy posted a clip, we had a couple calls about it, post a clip, we're like, oh, 10 million views, like this is insane. And like, even he's made some, viral shit for HipHopDX, and I know we're probably gonna make some clips from this, and
I see what you guys are doing on Instagram and Reels and YouTube, and I know like next year when we meet at this time, it's going to be elevated for you guys too. So I appreciate you having me on the platform. I do want to say though, disclaimer, you put this at the beginning, I'm only wearing shades because A, it's sunny. I'm not the type of guy to wear shades in the middle of an interview, and B, I got a massive sunburn from the BET red carpet today on my nose, and so my nose looks super red without the orange glasses as a contrast. So just so you know, I'm not usually that guy. I've been that guy a couple times. Not usually that guy, but just for this scenario, I had to be.
For sure. Well, like I said, thank you, bro. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, bro. Let's go. Yo, what's good? It's Jeremy Hecht here in LA with my boys. We're going coast to coast with it. I'm wearing shades, but I'm only wearing shades because it's a specific scenario and my nose is burned. So I don't want to see a comment about the shades, even though I know me acknowledging it is now going to be a bunch of comments about the shades. But listen, you can take it up with me on Instagram at Jeremy_Hecht. Same thing TikTok, same thing YouTube, at Something Dope for the People, at HipHopDX. And listen, if your day isn't going as planned, just know it can always improve. It can always get better. There's always a light on the other side, and I'm giving you the okay.